We've had enough time with Trailblazers to put together a comprehensive list of issues that we've found that we've sourced from a variety of places. We've scoured the forums, we've looked at Reddit, we've talked in Discord. A lot of it comes from first-hand verification and validation of things. We've looked at the issue tracker. We've talked to every single person who wanted to talk to us about Trailblazers, what's been going on, the issues. And we've put together a document, which is a consolidated feedback document, where we've also done some prioritization of these issues. Mind you, the prioritization is my own. I feel having a prioritized list is more helpful than just going through a list of issue trackers with the kind of upvoting that's happening with the issue tracker. But you'll find if you go in the issue tracker that the voting on the issues actually more or less matches this classification, so it's not completely entirely out of my own figment of my own imagination. Keep in mind, this is a feedback video. It's meant to provide information to the developers as part of the beta process. It is not me complaining. It is not me saying all these problems or anything. I am trying to be as matter of fact and objective as possible with regards to the current issues in Trailblazers to provide all the possible information to people who are hard at work trying to solve them. So before you go up to the comments and say, it's a beta, stop complaining, bear in mind, yes, it is a beta, and this is exactly what this is about. Player feedback and information back to the developers about what works and also what doesn't. So now let's go through the list. And I've classified these in colonization-related bugs, game-breaking ones, major, minor, and manageable, other bugs, feature requests, balance and consideration, and then there's one thing that's currently under investigation. So that's what we're going to go through. There are 3 game-breaking megabugs. All 3 of them have been acknowledged, which means the developers are aware and presumably and hopefully are working towards a fix. The first game-breaking megabug is the fact that space stations, and not just tier 3 bio ones as the tracker I created originally implied, but all of them can end up drastically misplaced. As in, you might go to your colonization view, as I'm doing here, place something in the first slot of a star, like here, and it might end up be placed in a completely different slot, like, for instance, around this gas giant, or Lord knows where, without any kind of warning, without any kind of cancel. Why this happens is, to me, an objective mystery. Some of it has to do with the fact that sometimes there's not enough space, according to support, in slot 0 next to stars to place some of the larger items like tier 3 stations. But this has been happening pretty much everywhere, and it can't just be that. So there's something else at play and something else going on. So unfortunately, there is no workaround at this time other than rolling the dice and trying your luck. So if you place a station, no, but it may end up in a place completely different than the one you originally intended without any way to undo it, re-roll it. The only thing you can do at that point is open a ticket with support, recording what happened and asking them to manually fix it, which is going to take a lot of time, candidly, because the poor folks in support, which by the way have been nothing but amazing, are totally overworked right now. So bear that in mind. So that's the first mega bug, which they are aware of, and I hope they're working towards a fix. The second issue has to do with the station economies not updating. Now, this is particularly notable in economies that have colony as their economy type. And here I click on the wrong button. As economy type stations are supposedly meant to pick up on the economy of a relevant system. But in general, the way and I click on the wrong system again, the way the industry system in colonization should work is that stations should be influenced by their surroundings. So if you have sort of a tourist settlement here, for example, and you have an asteroid station here, the asteroid station is extraction by default. This one should be influenced by the tourist settlement, so it should become extraction tourism or something like that. Or at least there should be some kind of reflection of the overall system economy, which in this case is extraction military, uh, affecting the stations and what stations produce. But that isn't actually happening. There are some reports of some commanders that have managed to change their economy with a disproportionate number of facilities being built around them. But it's so extreme and the effect is kind of so minuscule that there's something wrong. There's something fundamentally broken with regards to how station economies work presently in the game. A lot of people have been asking me, hey, how do I make a system to be refinery and produce metals and CMMs? Or, hey, how do I make a system to be industry and produce all these other goodies? Right now, we don't really have an answer to this because the system is really not working as intended. And so when you place down things like settlements and like, be aware that their effects in the current state may not work as intended. And this is the second megabug of the whole thing, which again was acknowledged in the issue tracker. So presumably they are working towards addressing and having some kind of solution. The third megabug has to do with missing documentation on the point cost increase for tier 2 and tier 3 station after the second such station is laid down. After you build 2 or more stations like asteroid bases or Coriolis stations or orbit stations or tier 3 planetary ports, those are all the things that count. And so do Ocellus space stations, tier 3 and tier 2 space stations and tier 3 planetary ports, as there are no tier 2 planetary ports. What happens is your point cost increase doubles. And there is no information about this in the documentation presently in the game. Like, for instance, if I try to build an Ocellus port here, which normally would cost 6, it's now currently costing 12 because I have laid down 2 asteroid bases in the system, as you can see here. Now, note, you don't need to complete them. The moment you start the construction of your second one, the point doubling happens for all future stations. Obviously, I had no idea. So my ice cream system, as some of you may be familiar, this is a system where I found Mimus and I'm, quote, producing ice cream of a system, which then I'm storing in the ice asteroid here for ice cream export. Well, this system has no tier 3 stations as a result, because the moment I was ready and had enough points to create a tier 3 station, I got hit with a point doubling. And as a result, I now have 7 points, and I have no desire to get all the 12 I need in the system to actually lay down a tier 3. So this is going to stay the way it is. But again, this is more than anything a documentation problem, which has been acknowledged. There is no issue tracker because, again, it's really more a documentation issue than anything else. But it has been acknowledged on the forums that this was a miss, that the documentation didn't make it into live production. So presumably in the next update, they will update the documentation stating how this point doubling system works, which is after your second station is laid down, the cost of future tier 2 and tier 3 stations doubles. Now, what we still don't know is whether the doubling happens again once you hit 4. No idea. Like, it may or it may not. No information about any of that. So there's clearly an information gap because, especially in the context of these being permanent placements, there's no way you can realistically plan your system without this knowledge. It's going to end up messed up at best, completely bricked at worst. So, again, mega bug that the FDev team has acknowledged, and presumably that information will make it through into a future update. Beyond that, there's a number of major bugs that, again, developers should consider, but it's good for players to also be aware of. The first such major bug, again, I don't know. This one is a tricky one because it's not necessarily technically a bug, but it's more around the way a certain mechanic works. And this one has to do with what we call system sniping. The issue with system sniping is based on how the current colonization system works, the colonization range is only 15 light years and not 16, by the way. That was a typo, but we'll get to that in a moment. So if you want to, let's say, like a system out here, if you really like this system, you basically need to build a number of outposts on the way to reach this system and make the claim on your target system. So you need to like build a bridge of outposts. And this is what most large communities and people have been doing. That's how the Anti-Xeno Initiative and others got to the Pleiades. That's how people are going out to different nebula. That's what's happening right now. So people building a bridge chain of outposts to go places towards interesting systems that they want to claim. The issue with that is the moment you build the final settlement in a chain, let's say you're building here and your target system is here, the moment that the construction of this settlement is complete, the new station with the colonization contact active immediately appears the moment you deliver your final load of cargo. As a system architect, and presumably the one that's completing that build, you are stuck on the pad watching the brewer video for like 10 or 15 seconds saying congratulations. In the meanwhile, there is some evil commander who is in a 932 meters per second Viper, already undocked, heading to your newly built station, and who will get there far sooner than you could ever hope to get to, because there's no way that you're going to watch the brewer video, undock, and get there before someone who is waiting in space around you. And because everything is first come, first serve, that commander will get to your colonization contact, which is immediately active before you, and they will make that claim on your target system before you have any chance to do so. This is particularly bad for solo players who stand no chance against organized groups that are hanging out there to snipe their claims. Zero. But it also creates a very poor dynamic between organized groups that are constantly kind of out there trying to play snipe claim games with each other. We had to really fight to get our claim on the Pleiades 2, which is now the headquarters of the Anti-Xeno Initiative. It was a freaking battle. And honestly, this kind of system isn't conducive to fun and fair gameplay. So there needs to be some kind of mechanism, like a 10-minute exclusivity or 24-hour exclusivity, or a deploy button to manually deploy the station for the system architect that actually architected the original claim on the original station. Like, there's a ways that this can be addressed, but it can't be that the station automatically and immediately deploys with a colonization contact instantly active for everybody when the architect and final delivery commander is stuck on the pad watching a brewer video while somebody else is flying to snipe their claim. This system needs an update of some kind. Some people have asked, oh, does this mean that somebody can steal my system where I am the system architect? No. If you are the system architect of a system already, you can't actually steal that state. Once you are the architect, you remain the architect. But this allows to steal claims that you're trying to work towards and chains of outputs that you've built towards making a claim on a particular system that you are intending to claim. This is system sniping. This is what's going on. And this is something you need to be aware of. Right now, the only workaround for the system, the only workaround is to have friends, is to coordinate and have someone sitting in a very fast ship around the delivery station in space, ready to make a beeline towards the station once it pops, coordinate in voice the precise time of final delivery, and hope for the best. Hope that you're the first one to get there. Which, if you are coordinating in voice of final delivery, you have a decent shot at, but no guarantee. Again, this is system sniping, and this is something that I think needs to be overhauled and updated. Another major issue is that planetary settlements and space stations often don't match when they are constructed the type that is shown in the build screen. And furthermore, the landing pad information is incorrect. Now, this is more prominent on ground station, so it's not something I can show you while docked at a space station, but there are at least some instances of trying to build a particular type of settlement and the settlement ending up being built of the wrong type. Obviously a major issue. It doesn't affect tier 3 point generation, so it's not gonna break your system in that way, but it's also really not working as intended and something that needs to be fixed. There was another issue pertaining to requirements and the fact that certain requirements, like for instance, tourist settlement needing satellites being built, were not met by all types and variants. Like for example, it used to be the case that when you went and let's say you wanted to build, well, I don't have planetary spots here, but let's say I had a planetary spot here and I wanted to build a tourist settlement. I needed to build as a prerequisite a satellite. So I went and selected an installation, selected satellite. I got 3 options here, right? Hermes, Angalia, and Irene. Well, it used to be the case that Hermes did meet the prerequisite. So if I built a Hermit, then I was allowed to build the tourist settlement. But if I built the Irene variant did not meet the prerequisite. So this was a bug, which reportedly has been fixed. I haven't personally tested it. So again, in the comments below, if you want to comment if that's been your experience as well. If you have like an Irene satellite and that lets you build a tourist settlement, you don't actually have to build it. You just need to show that basically that prerequisite is met, so the game actually would allow you to build one. Yeah, that has reportedly been fixed, so that's a good thing. We got 1 down. The no time slots with fleet carriers was absolutely disastrous in the original wave of colonization. It has gotten a bit better, so I don't know if something was done on the back end to improve the situation, but yesterday we were back to 1 hour time to 1 hour jumps, jump timers. Now, this is bad when we're doing jumps of 500 light years from the bubble to colonize, for example, the Pleiades that are within 200 light years. But this is going to become absolutely wrecking once we reach, for example, the California Nebula, which is 600 light years away. And we're going to have to do 2 jumps each way to get back to the major refineries of the bubble. And if each jump is an hour 15, if you can even get a slot, I mean, good luck, right? It's going to just be absolutely awful. Now, there's some people that are saying, oh, this was happening because system colonization ships actually took up carrier slots. I haven't seen any evidence or substantiation that that was the case, although I can understand the logic because colonization ships look effectively like carriers and behave for every intended purposes exactly like carriers, so I can see them taking up carrier jump slots as part of a process. But again, there's no specific information that that was the case, so it's speculation at this point. Either way, this is something that will need to take some a hard look at, especially because colonization right now, especially outside of the immediate vicinity of the bubble, is very much carrier driven. If you're going to deliver 200,000 tons of metals to a tier 3 station, I mean, how are you going to do it if you're not hauling off 25,000 tons at a time through carrier loads? It's just not feasible. So you need carriers, you need carrier time slots to be able to use carriers. And consequently, if you want colonization to succeed long term, you need to find a way to address the carrier no time slots issue. Now, for a fan favorite, most of you have seen the Lantern Light spinning station around a Neutron-star. People just absolutely love this. This is a community favorite. Although it does need fixing of some kind. There's actually people clamoring for saying leave it as it is, which might be a bit extreme. But I think having like a tourist beacon as a reminder of a Lantern Light spinniness, I think would make fans very happy, as this is an extremely popular one. This is the fact that stations built around spinning neutron stars or other fast spinning stars also spin at a very high rate, making docking impossible and making for a very funny thing. Now, one thing I didn't mention, by the way, is regarding the megabugs. Yes, there's a documentation problem with the tier 2, tier 3 point increase, but this feature is also universally disliked. everybody's saying construction in a system should become easier, not harder, as you go. The idea of doubling your points after you build 2 ports, even if they're just tier 2 ports, is punishing and not fun. At the very least, split the system between tier 2 and tier 3 stations, so you can only build two tier 2 stations, but that doesn't affect your ability to build tier 3s, or vice versa. I think people would find that more fair than, hey, you build 2 tier 3s and you're done, because after that it's like an impossible amount of infrastructure to build anything, not to mention in an undocumented way. So back to that point that I missed. So we talked about Lantern Light. Another issue has to do with additional construction slots showing up when building. So in many cases, when you build something new as an architect, it doesn't actually take up the slot. So if I was to say, let's say, build something in slot 1 here and place something here, it might add a station down here, but I might still see slot 1 as available. Sometimes the slot 1 actually gets taken up when the construction is complete, but sometimes you end up with permanent additional slots. And there's just some funkiness going on, which is very odd and very worrying from a integrity of data, integrity of a system standpoint, because what if I start construction of another station in tier slot 1 while my original station is being built? What happens then? I'm not going to find out, but if anybody wants to volunteer and find out what happens in that case, let me know. We're gathering data, so all data is welcome. But anyhow, what's obvious is that construction slot allocation when initiating construction is not working as intended. And this is something that needs to be looking into. Another major bug is that, at least in some cases, when you select to construct, and you get to select it at the time of system colonization. So if you begin new claim, I select, I don't know, I think all systems are taken here, which is kind of funny. There's not a single green system here in the Pleiades. Popular location. But anyway, let's say I selected a system here, and actually, was there an initiate colonization button from the get-go? That's funny. Explore, oh, it's explore, never mind. It's like the instructions. If I was to kind of like find a green system and select something here, it will let me select a station. There's at least one documented case from Commander Jennings where he selected a Coriolis as the initial station, and what ended up being actually built by the colonization ship was instead an outpost. And again, without any ability to change it whatsoever. And support couldn't even fix it. There's a discussion of whether he needs to unclaim the system. I think support actually told him to cancel construction, to which, we wonder, we'd love to have a cancel construction button, but alas, we don't have one. We'll get into that in a moment. So again, bear in mind that it can happen that you place a Coriolis and instead you get an outpost placed. There's no known workaround for this bug. It's also somewhat inconsistent and somewhat rare from my experience. So we haven't been able to quite nail down exactly what's happening and what's going on. But again, something to be aware of. Now moving on to the more manageable and minor bugs. There's the so-called Murderous Autodock bug. Your Autodock autopilot is broadly unaware of the system geometry of construction sites. As a result, it will happily crash you into different parts of construction sites. The simple workaround is don't use Autodock at construction sites, or be very careful when using it and be ready to take over if you see your Autodock making a beeline straight into a station. This is also an issue at some of the new asteroid stations. There are reports of, for instance, the autopilot getting deeply confused trying to get out of pad 45. But again, there's the simple workaround of just, fly out manually. Another kind of issue that is minor but is something we kind of really need more information is the system economy specialization and how it works is profoundly unclear. There's some really high level but candidly really poor documentation in game with regards to, like, if we go under the player handbook, it's really poorly explained, like how this all works. And I get Frontier Developments general attitude of saying, let's not over-explain things, let's have people kind of like figure it out for themselves. I get all of that, but this is, again, especially since there's no undo button, this is um, this is just not something that you can leave documented at this level because nobody understands how this works, and as a result, the cost of experimentation here is too high. Like, you need days, if not weeks, of effort to try something and see if it even works out. And if it doesn't work out, you entirely break the system because there's no deconstruct or undo button. You can't leave us in this state with no documentation and leaving us trial and error for stuff that is so complex. Here, you have like in the handbook you'll find things like facilities can influence the economy of markets around and on the local body. This results in the market being more likely to produce commodities that relate to the economy. For example, an agricultural settlement will influence markets to produce food products such as grain and tea. First of all, because of megabug number 2, this doesn't happen because it's not working as intended. Second, what is local body? Like, does a moon affect what's being built in the orbit of the gas giant that it is orbiting? Does what I build in a gas giant affect what is built in free-floating space outside of a primary star? What about the secondary star? I mean, all of this is too high level and too wishy-washy, guys. We need more information unless you truly hate us and want people to waste days, if not weeks, breaking systems around just to try and reverse engineering your intentionally vague documentation here. So please don't hate us that much. Give us a bit more information as to how this actually works. I think we don't deserve that level of hate. So that's this issue. Another minor issue is that planetary construction sites are deemed dangerous and trigger logout timers. Not the end of the world. You don't always have to log out at a local site. It's just annoying, but I think we can live with it. The minimum distance between settlements is 200 kilometers. I believe I had seen it somewhere that the intent was it for B2E 100. So I don't know if this is getting added up as in 100 plus 100, which instead should have been 50 plus 50. But this is an easy fix, and honestly, it's not the end of the world if you need to build 200 kilometers apart. I think you will survive. The installation and settlement type is not visible during or after construction. Now, this is very annoying because you build stuff, but in a large system, it's kind of tricky to even keep track of what the heck you built. Right now, the best you can do is to go in the hold on, let me get into the system architect view, is to, and this is the wrong one, but this one will do anyway, like, and here I think I may need to kind of like move the screen a little bit to show you, like, is to go in the colonization view, and if you go under the information, there's a rename facility. If you click on this one, this icon, which now I have to kind of move the thing again because it's like on the other thing, this, see now you have an icon which shows this is like an industrial outpost in the middle, top of the screen. But it's the only indication of what facility it is. And when you have variants, for example, of satellites, it doesn't tell you which satellite variant it is. You need to go and visit it and visually identify, because even scanning the site doesn't tell you the type of site. You have to visually identify it and match it to the image in the construction site. It is incredibly laborious and convoluted. So again, this is something that honestly should just have more information in the UI. Again, we can survive, but it's annoying. So another minor issue is that newly built settlements are assigned to random in-system factions instead of the controlling faction. And especially for community build efforts, this is quite annoying because, like, let's say we were building up Pleiades Sector MISB 40, which is the design headquarters of the Anti-Xeno Initiative. Every single installation is a dice roll with regards to what faction it is assigned to. Now, again, I have to scroll a little bit to show you. So, for instance, this relay went to Cirrus Inc. This other relay also went to Cirrus Inc. This Phoenix Ascension one went to the Anti-Xeno Initiative. But it's kind of a dice roll. And then you have like major stations like the headquarters of the Anti-Xeno Initiative, which for now, and I promise you not for long, but for now, has gone to Cirrus Inc. even though the Anti-Xeno initiative solidly controls the system, as you can see from the faction side. Honestly, if you're building up settlements yourself, they should be going to the controlling faction, or at the very least, you should be given the choice of what faction you want to be in control once the construction is complete. Otherwise, the way we're going to fix this is by fighting over every single one of these installations, and there's going to be 92 installations of this system, and each fight is going to take at least a week because a war is 4 days to complete. So we have 60 of those 90 statistically will not be of our faction. So we have 60 times at least a week, a year and a half of BGS work to address this. Guys, come on. Like, don't punish us like this, right? Don't make us do a year and a half of BGS work just to take over factions of facilities that we built ourselves in a system controlled by our faction. I get the idea of like, let's distribute things among factions, but this is not something that as a designer, as a construction makes sense. This should go to the controlling faction, period. In my opinion. Again, you might disagree, you might have a different design intent, you might want to explain that to us for once, but that is our feedback for what it's worth. So, we talked about the faction system. Colony ship spam in origin system. So, colony ships create a slot, also sort of a colonization ship slot, also in the system where they originate from. So I don't think I can show you from this system, but maybe the zoo has a way to see that, because the zoo probably has a bunch of colonization made from the system. And this is, again, not in the to system, it's in the from system. And I don't know if we can see it here. Yeah, there's no kind of immediate visibility here unless I find a system where that is the case, where a bunch of like claims might have been made out of. I know this was the case in one of these systems a while ago. There you go. This is a great example. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's another one, 5. All of these slots are taken up by colonization ships that have gone out from this system to colonize some other system in the general neighborhood. This number can grow significantly, and you can have a system with a lot of colonization ships parked or at least slotted in it. I don't know that this is desirable or intended. It's not a big deal. Nobody really cares from a kind of gameplay or substance, but it's probably also not intended nor what you want, so something to be aware of. And it may create issue in slots with carriers coming and going anyway, so again, something to keep in mind. Settlement image previews are swapped. I don't know if this was fixed, but at least 3 settlements had their images swapped as listed here. And there's actually an issue tracker, which I don't remember, but there is one about this, so I'll add it in back later. Asteroid stations have actual asteroids spawning inside of them. Now, this one's a funny one, which, again, it's not really the end of the world, but sometimes it is annoying because sometimes those asteroids can actually spawn in the mail slot. And if they spawn in the mail slot, well, guess what? You can't actually enter the station. And I'm not sure if they're cleared on relog or if you have to wait until some orbital thing kind of moves the asteroid away. But again, there should be a mechanism through which your asteroid stations have some kind of range which prevents asteroids from spawning inside of them or in their immediate vicinities. All right. Happiness starts at 0 on first weekly tick. I don't know. This might have been fixed because, like, I think in the most recent mails that we received, we did get an actual happiness value, but it used to be that every system was listed at 0 happiness. In last week, however, we have a number of systems at 0, but some actually have updated their happiness value. So maybe this was fixed. I mean, more broadly, there's no explanation as to how happiness works. It's clearly not another thing called happiness, which, by the way, from a system design standpoint, you decide how you feel about this, but if I have a variable in the system that is called happiness, and here it is, happiness of the main faction, which is happy, I would think maybe twice before I would introduce another variable, also called happiness, which is another thing, which is not the happiness of a faction, but is some other happiness, which, by the way, is not explained and not described as to how it's calculated or affected. So I think there needs to be, at the very least, better documentation for this new, quote, happiness thing. Possibly a renaming of this happiness to something that is more meaningful and less confusing, because, again, happiness to this day has meant happiness of factions in a given system. But you're telling me now happiness is a new and different thing, so think about that. Again, something to consider. Concurrent constructions available count is correct in the system view, incorrect when zooming to the planetary view. Again, this is kind of a minor bug, but it's something worth sort of articulating and highlighting. Like if you see up here, the constructions available says 5. But if you zoom into a planet, and I don't think this is going to happen because I don't have a planet where I can actually construct things, and I don't have anything in construction anywhere. So let me see if I can actually show you this bug live from actual view. I don't think I might on this account because I don't have why it keeps going on this system. I don't know. It's another bug, but a different one. All right. Or maybe I was just misclicking. All right. So here it says construction available 5. If you click to and go to a planetary view, look at this. Exactly the bug. See how it has switched construction availables 4? The way construction available is calculated when you are in the planetary view is bugged. When you zoom out and you're in the system view, it is counted correctly. Something to keep in mind. While I'm on this, I'm also talking about another thing that's related to this. In the FAQ that was provided to elite partners in the elite partner program, one of the FAQ answers, which by the way I'm officially allowed to talk about, so before you call me out, have explicit permission to talk about those FAQs. There was a statement that this concurrent construction could increase from 5 to 15. I have never seen it increase. So I don't know if that FAQ was outdated or and this value is just fixed at 5, or if there are some other criteria that need to be met before that number increases from 5 to a bigger number that nobody has met yet. But again, if you somehow have seen this number increase from 5 to more than 5, please get in touch because I'd love to hear about your system. I have not seen it anywhere, and it's a bit of a question mark. Then another bug. Space installations are miscounted in Architect View. Ground stations are correctly counted. So this is another one that I can easily show you live. So if you go under System View, look at this. I have 4 space stations in this system and 6 planetary stations. So a total of 10, according to this. So the planetary stations are correctly counted. I have 1 here, 1 here, total of 3, and 1 here, total of 6. So that 6 is correct. But let's look at the space ones. I have 1 here, 1 here. This is the original port, which doesn't count. 1 here, that's 3. 1 here, 4. 1 here, 5. 1 here, 6. 1 here, 7. So I have 7 built space installations. However, the game thinks I have only 4. This somehow counts towards your architect bonus, by the way, so your architect bonus won't kick in if this miscounting bug happens. I don't know what this has to do. It might have to do with the fact that I built more than one type of the same installation. So if you have the same the same satellite twice, for example, it might not count it because it thinks it's a duplicate or something like that. I don't know. There's something going on with the way it's counting space installations, and it's not doing it correctly. So again, this is a bug that needs fixing. Moving on to the next one. The top 5 contributors listed in stations are incorrect, and obviously so. When you go down to a station, actually I can probably show you here, and the station itself. When you look at the local news and scroll down to the original news, it will tell you who the commanders that contributed the most are, both to the specific port, which is here, and to the system as a whole. Now, not only is this not ordered in any meaningful way, and the one below happens to be ordered, but in this case it's ordered. In most other cases it's not. It's not even ordered, as you can see. This first one, the top 5 constructions, is most of the time completely wrong. As you can see from what I posted in actually the document, the top 5 contributors to all constructions in the Pleiades Zoo sum up to a total of, what is it, 200 tons of materials. This is clearly wrong. There's been almost 400,000 tons of materials delivered to the Pleiades Zoo, and some commanders have upwards of 20,000 tons delivered. So this count is wrong, and something that should be looked at, because it's a way to recognize commanders, and it's disappointing that it's just completely wrong right now. So again, something to look at. I don't know if we have a bug tracker for this one. Again, if somebody has it, we'll add it in. The total contributor list to the port build appears entirely unordered. Please order it by amount delivered descending, like any proper ordering would be. That's a minor one, but it'd be appreciated. And we talked about the 5 to 15 slots not happening in terms of build. In terms of other bugs that are not directly related to colonization, but which are incredibly annoying, somehow the ammo count visualization in flight has disappeared. So let me show you. Actually, I don't have weapons here, so I can't show you. But if you look at a weapon in your right panel, like here, you will see that it has an ammo count next to it. So like a railgun might have 80 plus 1 in the chamber to start. You will be able to see this while docked. The moment you undock, your right panel suddenly loses the ability to show you the ammo count on the weapon. You can still see it in the main HUD on the left and right when you have them selected in a file group, but you lose the ability to see the ammo count in your right panel. This is a newly introduced bug with Trailblazers, which should be fixed, because especially if you're using your right panel to rearm a weapon, you need to be able to see which weapon you're rearming in terms of like which one is out of ammo. Otherwise, you might just rearm a random one and spend materials to rearm a weapon that's totally good on ammunition. So yeah, that's a newly introduced bug pertaining to ammo. And then the carrier market purchase of commodities doesn't immediately show up in cargo hold. This is a long holding bug where if you go to a carrier and you select the commodities market and then you buy a bunch of stuff and then you exit, your inventory will still show empty. You need to go back into a commodities market and then exit immediately, and that will result in your inventory items properly showing up. Or you need to relog from main menu back into the game. Annoying, slows down carrier-based hauling quite a bit. Something to be fixed. And then the transfer of items, not from the market, but from the transfer view and storage, this one, is incredibly slow. Like, it doesn't have the speed up if you hold the button like you have in the market view. It really needs to have a speed up from like keeping a button pressed like the market view. The workaround for this is that you set up market orders from your own carrier to yourself, so you end up buying from your own carrier to speed this up because it was so freaking slow. But that is incredibly annoying. It requires setting up the market each and every time. Honestly, this should be something that's fixed in the transfer view, that you can actually transfer things at a reasonable velocity. So that covers the minor bugs. Now, feature requests. The one key, essential, really, really core feature that Trailblazers needs to have before any reasonable person would call this feature complete is an undo, cancel, and deconstruct button. Imagine releasing Planet Coaster 2 without a deconstruct or cancel construction button. Imagine that. This is the same thing. You've done a colonization release without an ability to cancel construction. I don't think any reasonable person would accept your definition of feature complete without this feature. It is too painful especially in a situation where there's plenty of bugs about station placement, about station type, about economies, to not be able to change the outcome of decisions, which in some cases, by the way, you have no control over in the current state of the game. This is an absolute requirement for Trailblazers, and for it to not be a gigantic source of frustration for so many people. And this is honestly that as a creator and as a community member myself, this is a hill I'm going to die on. As in, personally, any representation of those who share this feeling, I reject your statement that this build is feature complete, and I will not accept it until you give us an undo, cancel, and deconstruct button. And you might not care at all, and that's fine. That's how I think a fair share of the community feels. You're welcome to take it and accept our feedback and do something with it, as feedback is a gift. Or you're welcome to ignore us and do what you want. It's your game and your property after all, so you have every right to do so. That's really the only feature request that we feel so strongly about. Everything else is nice to have. Everything else is nice to have. NPC haulers, the ability to actually have a credit sink in the game, finally, to spend those billions or even hundreds of billions that we made splashing Fargoids, to actually allow NPC haulers to deliver stuff for us would be great. Or even to have player characters haul for a profit for us. We're doing this to a degree with carriers, setting high price on buy markets around the major refineries of the bubble, but honestly, I would rather do it directly on the construction site and not have to mess with carriers myself and burn some credits for some commanders to earn. The ability to pin a shopping list of construction mats. Right now, I am taking photos with my phone on the architect view of the materials required of given construction ports to be able to kind of then scroll them through a market and compare and say, hey, I need to buy this, I need to buy this. That is not exactly a great way to go about it. Being able to pin the construction site shopping list would be an in-game dream. So something to consider. The ability to select the location of the primary port in the system would also be great. Probably not the most essential thing in the universe, but it would be great. This is not kind of a big deal, but having the architect being able to evict player carriers that are kind of blockading them would help deal with some trolling. But, trolling is fine every now and then. So long as it doesn't become excessive and extends itself to kind of griefing, we can deal with some of that. More refinery specialized buildings. Right now, the only refinery specialized building is the refinery hub, which is a tier 2 building, which, by the way, doesn't even have a docking port and is furthermore a restricted area, so you can't even go near it once you build it, which is funny that you get fined at the installation you build yourself, but whatever. So that's an annoying thing to specialize your industries for refinery, but fine. The ability to donate arcs, nothing to do with colonization, but in general, let us buy arcs for our commanders. There's no really in-game benefit. You can argue with pre-built ships, maybe there's some, but whatever. We can still do it. We can get donations for YouTube and the like, but I think you would be much better served as a company by giving people the ability to buy arcs for other commanders. Yes, I'm sure there's going to be some issues of fraud and things we need to deal with, but it will be a decent revenue stream, which, by the way, is a good thing for the community, so do consider this. Now on to balance considerations. Too much hauling. Way too much hauling. Especially without NPC haulers. Either add those in or lower the tonnage required drastically. You've already done that to a degree. Core release, for instance, have gone down from 71K to 53K, but still. It depends what the intent is. If you want colonization to be exclusively a group-driven thing, then fine. Leave them as they are. But the result is only groups will be doing this for any meaningful amount of time. So if that's your intent, fine. Leave it as it is. If you want to make colonization more solo player friendly, you have to reduce those requirements. That's the feedback. You decide. Then colonization range. Right now, colonization, and I wrote 16, but it's actually 15. There was a typo regarding the actual range for colonization. This 15 light year range is too short. And furthermore, the idea of distance gating the expansion rather than time gating it or gating it in some other way is candidly rather odd. I mean, what you're going to end up with this system is a galaxy littered with crappy outposts abandoned to themselves because it's the only way to actually bridge and get to the actual systems you want to claim. Now, I don't want to see a galaxy that looks like trash, literally with random outposts that are just left there and abandoned by commanders who care less about the systems. I don't know if you do, but I don't. And I would much rather have a range of about 50 light years, which, by the way, is 1/10 of a carrier jump. So we're not talking about insane ranges, with some other mechanism, either time gate the claims or require a system to be built up to a certain level before claims can be made from it and the colonization contact appears, or I don't know, some other mechanism like that slows down colonization comparably. 16 light years is just meh. So yeah, that's the balance consideration on that. Weekly architect payments are a pittance. And by the way, and we'll get into it in the unconfirmed under investigation, the creative fact states that weekly architect payments are redeemable as bonds from system administrator. The exact quote says, payments will be issued each week and can be redeemed by visiting an administration contact. But clearly, no such bond is issued because I'm pretty sure that not a single player in the entire game has received an administrative bond for their system architect payments. I know I haven't. So we're now investigating whether you're currently getting paid at all. I don't know if that now goes straight into your bank account. I've started a survey on YouTube. I'd love to get your input if you notice that you actually are getting paid, or the pittance that we're owed, we're not even paid the pittance that we're owed. So that one's under investigation. Nevertheless, it's a truly pitiful amount. Guys, you are aware that a fully laden carrier costs $34 million to start, plus jumps. So operationally speaking, a fully laden operating carrier is going to cost you roughly $40 million a week, right? Right? So you're basically saying a practically fully built system cannot support 1/10 of a carrier? Come on. Like, a fully built system should support a carrier. Maybe at least half of a carrier. Like, at least it should be 20 million. Like, and instead it's like $500,000. I mean, it's just a pittance, guys. It's like you're nickel and diming us here for an incredible amount of work required to haul all this stuff to even build all that stuff. And then you're also mentioning the fact that it will be taxed about $5 million a week. Now, I don't think anyone is even remotely close nowadays to that amount because of what a pittance it is to start. But I'm kind of curious, how much is a tax above $5 million a week? Is it 5%? Is it 95%? Like, how much are you going to tax us above $5 million? Not like anybody's going to find out anytime soon because there's so little money here that like getting to $5 million a week was going to require months at the current rate. But for the first people and very few people that will ever get to that level. But again, guys, this whole payment is absurdly low for the effort required and, truly nickel and dimeling us. Another comment about balancing, the refinery contact that he introduced is currently useless. Trading 2 tons of unrefined metals for 1 ton of refined metals is such a waste of time that nobody's ever gonna bother. Ever. At the very least, it should be the opposite. It should be 1 ton of refined metals to 2 tons 1 tons of unrefined metals to 2 tons of refined ones. And possibly you need to make it up to 1 to 4 or even 1 to 8 to make it worthwhile for people to even begin to consider using refinery contacts. At this point, it's forget about it. That's a complete waste of people's time. Furthermore, the architect discount, which you get when 10 stations are built, is 3%. It is another pittance. The discount at Shinrata Desra, last time I checked, was 10%, and Shindes has far, far better outfitting than any player-built station can hope to ever have. At the very least, you need your architect discount to be comparable to the one at Shindes. Otherwise, again, people are going to laugh at your face and say, why would I ever buy things at a player-built station when I can get a better discount and better outfitting options at Shindes, which every player with Elite has access to? And even for players who don't have Elite and don't have access to Shindes, any system controlled by Leader on Grui has a 15% discount, which you could argue eventually gets added up to 3%. But again, it's not going to be the 3% to 15% to 18% difference that's going to kind of sway where people choose to build things. It's going to be the outfitting options. So at the very least, you need to make this comparable to Shindes. Otherwise, again, it feels like you're nickel and diming us. And then, as I mentioned, what's under investigation is if we are actually getting paid at all in the current system. We're also kind of trying to figure out a bunch of other things regarding how the industry works and whatnot. However, this wraps up, and you will find the link to this document in the video below. I welcome comments and input, as always, in the video comments if you had a different experience with the bugs listed here, if you have a bug that is not listed, or if you have an issue tracker link which you want added, or if you want anything else related to the topic of feedback on Trailblazers, feel free to add it in the comments below. And glory to mankind. Crown of Mechan, over and